Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm Scott Lauber, and I write about the Phillies and Major League Baseball. I host this show each and every week, and no matter where you're finding us, Apple, Spotify, Inquirer.com, the Inquirer's YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, or X, thank you so much for spending some of your time with us. If you're tuning in this week, you surely know that the Phillies season is over. The ending was abrupt, and if we're being honest, absolutely brutal. With the bases loaded and 2 out in the 11th inning of Game 4 of the National League Division Series Thursday night at Dodger Stadium, a two-hopper back to the mound went off Orion Kerkering's glove. As he picked it up, JT Realmuto pointed to first base. Instead, Kerkering not only threw the ball home, but he threw it wildly. The Phillies lost the game 2-1 and the series 3-1. And now all that's left are postmortems filled with questions that don't have easy answers. Luckily for us, we have the perfect guest to help us try to make sense of it all, because Larry Andersen has seen it all. In 17 years as a Major League pitcher and 28 as a Phillies broadcaster. As a player, LA was part of the Phillies bullpen for pennant-winning teams in 1983 and 1993. He was there when Mitch Williams gave up the World Series winning homer to Joe Carter in 1993. And as I searched for context for Kerkering's series-ending error, both in Phillies history and in baseball at large, Touch 'em all, Joe is one of the moments that has popped into my head a lot over the last few days. So we'll talk about that, how the Phillies chose to move past that moment, and how Kerkering, 24 years old and the youngest player on the Phillies Division Series roster, can handle the fallout from this one. But if you've listened to Larry Andersen over the years in the radio booth alongside Scott Fransky, or really if you know anything about him, you know he has opinions on a lot of things. So I can't wait to get his thoughts on the 96-win season that unfolded over the last 6 months, another disappointing postseason, and how the Phillies can finally get over this postseason hump, if they can. Can they do it with this existing core, assuming, of course, that they're able to bring back Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, and maybe Ranger Suarez in free agency? Or do there need to be major changes? Is Rob Thompson the right manager to lead the Phillies forward? There's so much to unpack. And if you stick with me after our conversation, I'll open up my reporter's notebook to look back on the Dodgers series, because while Kerkering's error was the final image, I couldn't help thinking about this during the flight home from Los Angeles. How on earth did the Phillies lose a series in which their pitching held Shohei Ohtani to 1 for 18 and the Dodgers overall to a 199 average and 557 OPS? The answer, I think, is that Schwarber, Bryce Harper, and Trey Turner combined to go 3 for 35 with 15 strikeouts in the 3 losses. Not coincidentally, the Phillies scored a total of 7 runs in those games, 1 fewer than they scored in Game 3 when Schwarber, Harper, Turner went 7 for 13 with 1 strikeout and 2 Schwarber bombs. We'll get into all of that and more, but right now, here's my sit-down with Larry Andersen. Larry Andersen, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, happy to be here, Scott. Appreciate it.
I have to doubly thank you because this was short notice. I'm sort of sleepwalking through the airport in Los Angeles on Friday morning, and I put out the bat signal, and you answered the call as always. And so thank you for that. And there's always so many great reasons to catch up with you, but I really think we need your perspective because, as I said in the introduction of the show, you've seen almost everything in all your years as a player and a broadcaster. So I'll start here, and you can take it anywhere you want to go. Come back to the mound, picked up by Orion Kerkering, and what went through your mind when you saw what we've all seen now about 100 times on replay?
Just oh no! I mean, just seeing it. I mean, I could do one thing, and I somehow made it last for a long time, was throw a slider. That was the extent of it. I used to be able to. I threw fastballs, I threw curveballs, changeups. I stopped using it, and I lost it. You stop using it, and you lose it, and that's what happened with me. I was not a great fielding pitcher. The ball like that, like Kerkering, I would have done everything I could to get out of the way of it. But when it's hit that slow, you don't have a choice. And then picking it up and throwing it, I was not real good at that. And I could do all the PFPs I wanted, but until you're in that situation, people don't understand, I don't think, that and what he said, I mean, he said it best himself. He said, I just panicked. Like, I could knock a ball down and pick it up. I didn't panic with that. It was just, I would kind of underhand it sometimes, but if I had to throw it to first, I did, which I think was the right play. But in that moment, everybody's screaming, the noise is, deafening, and everything leaves your mind. You're not, that's why it's so important ahead of time to say in your mind, what if this happens? If the ball comes back to me, what am I going to do? And if you have that, and I do think the pitch clock affects some of that. Pitchers don't have a chance to think about anything before a pitch, except where they're throwing it. And so I think the big thing, and he just came out and said, he said, I just panicked. And it's a shame, but it happens. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's no consolation. You can put your arm around them. You can, pat him on the back. You can do whatever you want, but I shouldn't say it doesn't help him. It does help him, but as soon as he's alone again, he's killing himself. I don't mean literally. He's just beating himself up, and it's just your heart goes out to him because I think I can experience. I've been through things like that. Maybe not in that crucial of a situation, but where I've cost the team a game or felt like I have. It's just not a good feeling. And then in that situation, you can triple it. It's magnified.
Yeah. So I'm glad, a couple of things there. I'm glad you mentioned PFP, pitcher fielding practice. I don't know how many emails I've gotten over the last few days, people being like, don't they practice this? Don't they work on this? Maybe they need to do the fundamentals. And the answer, and people think it's just, you're making an excuse for the guy, but you can practice that every day all you want, but you can't simulate the 11th inning
right
with the bases loaded in Dodger Stadium, 50,000 people yelling and screaming. And I think, as Orion said, he panicked and, look, the ball went off his glove, and I think his clock was probably going a mile a minute there. And he was thinking the play was to the plate when really he could have gotten him at first base. He still had a lot of time, but you can work on that all you want, right? And it's just, you're never going to simulate that situation.
And that's the thing why it's so important when you do fundamentals in spring training and having done it 25 times or 25 years, counting the minor leagues, it's maybe more than I don't know, but you can't, it's tough to simulate that situation. But that's why it's so important when you're doing fundamentals is you have to do something. To me, you almost have to make a game of it and say, if you don't do this, you're doing 3 laps around the entire complex or whatever, something that's just not fun, where it gives you a little anxiety that if you don't do it. And I think you have to put it in that situation. You mentioned fundamentals. I got to be honest, this was not a good fundamental team. If you look at base running, outfield throws, missing a cutoff man, there's a number of things. And I read a great article a few months ago. Joe Simpson sent it to me from the Braves, and I don't know where he got it, and I probably could find out, but it was a guy that wrote about how players aren't competing as much anymore against the other team. They're competing against their metrics because that's what pays them. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, where analytics has gotten so far in the way of how these players play today and what they do. It's everybody's buddy, everybody's happy, everybody's talking and patting each other on the back. Opponents. And I go back to thinking about Nolan Ryan. When I was in Houston, I played with him for a couple of years. His best friend was Harry Spillman. Harry Spillman's wife was actually his secretary. And Harry Spillman played for the Giants. When we went to San Francisco, Nolan's out doing his run-ins on the track, on the outfield track, pole to pole, doing his running. And Harry Spillman's out there shagging fly balls. Nolan wouldn't look at him. He wouldn't speak to him. He wouldn't say hi to him. It's his best friend. Yeah. But he said, he's on the field. He's in a different uniform. He's not on my team. He's an enemy. And Nolan, and those you fought against the other team.
Yeah.
I don't see that. I don't see the same thing today. I don't see the fundamentals being preached. I see the analytics being preached. And I don't get it. I'm not saying analytics are bad, but this baseball should not be consumed by analytics. It shouldn't be all about analytics. There should be some competition in there. And that's gone by the wayside to me. It really has. And it's a shame and it's hard to see, but going back to the fundamentals, it's seeing guys come up, and this happened last year. I won't mention the player. He comes up, and it happened this year. Not specific situation, but two guys walked ahead of him on 9 pitches. He comes up, swings at the first pitch, hits into a double play. I'm like, why are you swinging? Why don't you make him throw you a strike? And I think, Mookie did that with Johan Duran. It's just little things like that. And you mentioned little things before we got on, little things that have happened that cost us this series, little things. But those little things are important. And I didn't see us focused on little things. And I don't know, I don't put that on the coaches at this level, because these guys should know that when they get here. They shouldn't be here if they don't know some of these things, I don't think. But if they're not preached, that you don't get better at them. I think Cassidy said it, if I do enough things enough times, I'm going to get better at it. Same with the PFP, whatever. But putting guys in situations where you can do the best you can to mirror what it's like in a big situation. Yeah. But I'm concerned with that with baseball, and I'm not saying specific to the Phillies. I see a lot of this all the way around the game, and it's frustrating for me. Little things that go by the wayside.
Yeah. As you can imagine, it was a tough clubhouse Thursday night. Kirkering's eyes were red and watery. It was evident he'd been crying. I think everyone, took their turn going over to him, putting an arm around him. Matt Strahm talked to him for a while. Nobody wanted him to be alone. And he stood there and he took our questions and gave brutally honest answers about what he described as a horse bleep throw, only he didn't say bleep. And he's a great kid, high character guy. He's been a guest on this podcast before. But I'll be honest, like standing in that clubhouse, I'm thinking about, some of the tougher high stakes playoff games that I've covered where it didn't go the Phillies' way. And like 93 came to mind for me. I didn't cover that series, but Mitch gives up the home run to Joe Carter. And like, to me, that's even a different scale because it's the World Series. But look, you were there, you were on that team. And I think all the questions then about like, how does Mitch come back from that? How do the Phillies come back from that? It kind of applies here too. So as someone who's dealt with tough moments and had teammates that have done the same, like how does Kirkering, who's 24, he's the youngest guy on the playoff roster, how does he go about making sure that this moment doesn't define him and what comes next?
Just keep working at your craft. I think you just, it's like they talk about closers or relievers. You have to be able to flush it and come back the next day. In this case, he has to flush it and come back the next year. I mean, there's nothing he can do right now that's going to change what happened. Nothing he can do in the future. It's going to change what happened. But he can change what people see in him. And I think one of the things for him is just understanding the game's hard, that it's tough. And you mentioned Strahm coming over and putting his arm around him. Strahm, to me, he had a tough series.
Yeah.
He had some good moments, but he had some really bad moments. And so for him to go over to Kirk, I think is big. And I would think that guys went over to Strahm after the Teo Hernandez home run, in the first game. It's and I think Strahm's, he's been around long enough that he knows. But I think sometimes for Kirkner, I think from the time he got here, he looked nervous to me. He just did. And that's not saying a bad. I was nervous every game I pitched in. I can't recall a game where I didn't have some nerves, which I don't think is a bad thing. I remember one of my good friends and coming up through the minor leagues together was Dennis Eckersley. He's in the Hall of Fame. He had 150 wins, 100 wins as a starter, 150 saves, the first one to do that. And talking with him, having dinner with him one spring when I was with San Diego, and his agent was there. And we were talking. I was like, how you feeling about relieving? And he goes, Larry, he says, I get on the mound, my legs are shaking. I'm afraid people can see my knees knocking together. But you would never know it. You would never. He used it, and I think that's something that Orion can learn from this. Use that nervous energy. Use it to your benefit. I think the other thing is getting out there and understanding that when you're out there, these guys aren't better than you. You're better than them. You have to have. If you don't have a mindset when you're out there that you're the best in that situation, you've already lost. Yeah. And I think it kind of goes to a little bit to something Lefty taught me just about pitching was the thought precedes the action. Mm-hmm. So when I so wanted to talk to Orion, I feel like I can't do it because it might undermine Caleb.
Sure.
The pitching coaches, the manager. So I'm very hesitant to say anything. Earlier on when the team was not a real good team, I talked to the pitchers more often, and I didn't feel like I'm getting in the way of anything. But I would say as you're pitching, there's three things you can think of. And this is the thought precedes the action. If I'm thinking I can't walk him, I'm going to walk him. Yeah. If I'm thinking I can't throw this pitch here, if I can't make a mistake here, you put more pressure on yourself. It's like the three things you can think of is I have to, I'm going to, or I can't. There's only one good option. That's what I'm going to. And so you get that thought in your head. You can do the same thing just in plays and being on the field. This is what I have to do. If the ball's back to me, I'm going to get it, throw to first, whatever it is. But I think you have to get to that point where you trust in yourself. You understand that, I'm going to have nerves, but I'm going to use them to my advantage. And it's tough to end it on a season. If this was game one and he came back and pitched a couple more times and had real good success, it's a different story probably. But to do it right here, right then and right now, the last game, the last play, that's going to sit with him all through the winter. And there's nothing you can do to make it go away. I mean, there's really not. And so you just have to go out and work your tail off to be the best you can be at your craft. And when you come to spring training, go out and show that and make people forget it. The thing with Mitch stood up after it happened. Being in the same boat with him, I pitched the 8th inning, and I pitched terrible. I did not pitch good at all. But a couple little things, a foul ball that they said went off, that I looked at the replay, and I swear it hit Tony Fernandez's foot. The umpire said it didn't. They wouldn't let us check the ball. It would change the whole complexion. But then I hit him, or I did end up hitting him, and then walked Ed Sprague. I think it was Ed Sprague, and then I get Borders to pop out. But what I did is I turned the lineup over for Mitch. So I was like, I was just as much at fault for me as Mitch was, and it's not a fun place to be. I got out of it, so nobody says anything. But what I did to Mitch, and I literally said this to Mitch. I apologized to him for putting him in that position, putting him in that situation.
Yeah, if the eighth inning goes different, maybe Carter doesn't bat in the ninth, right? So,
yep. Yeah.
Sticking with the pitching in this series, if you look at how Rob Thompson used his pitchers, like it was clear that he trusted the starters, right?
Yes.
He trusted Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola, and Suarez, and then his closer, Joan Duran. And look, the strategy in game 3 was to get as many outs as he could from the Nola-Suarez combo, and it worked. I mean, they got through 7 with a 2-run lead, and they didn't have to touch their bullpen. Luzardo was the choice on 2 days rest in the 10th inning in game 4, ahead of Kerkering, ahead of David Robertson, who we didn't see after the 7th inning of game 1, and we probably shouldn't have seen after the 6th inning of game 1. Thompson liked Matt Strahm, but in only certain pockets of the lineup, especially when it involved Shohei Ohtani. But in the end, did it seem to you, because I kind of felt this way from the start of the season, that they were a leverage reliever short? Yes. And it turns out maybe they were a leverage reliever short.
Yeah, I think they were. And I think that's where Dave Dombrowski took a shot. He took a chance on Robertson just because of his experience. That was one thing Rob mentioned to me in a little get together before the first game. Was like, I said, Kerkering or Robertson down the line. He said, If it's fifth or sixth inning, I'll probably go with Kerkering. If it's later, because I want to be able to use Robertson later because of the experience. And I understand that. The one thing with Rob, he has a reason. Most managers have a reason for why they do something, but I think Rob really dives into what he's going to do and why. And so he has an answer for what he does. In that case, he went to Robertson, and that's kind of not. I don't know. Maybe the situation was different from what he was saying earlier. That if it's early, fifth inning or so, I'm going to go with Kerkering, but he didn't. And that, sending Robertson back out. Yeah, you don't expect Robertson to go out there and do. I didn't expect him to do. He threw a curveball to was it Smith, Will Smith,
yep.
And almost hit him, and then he came back with another one that did hit him.
Yeah.
And he just to see him do that with a curveball was surprise. It surprised me. Like, he made a mistake with the first one. I'm like, oh, he can't do that. And he comes back and makes it even worse. And I didn't expect that. I don't think Rob did. I don't think anybody did. I don't think Dave Robertson expected that. But it's, there wasn't a situation for a reliever to get to Duran where I think Rob had 100% confidence in that situation where I can bring this guy in any situation, righty or lefty, and I'm confident he's going to get through it. I don't like he never had a closer until Duran. He wasn't comfortable. But once we got this guy, he's like, he's my closer. Okay, now I got to kind of do the same thing with the setup guy, the number one setup guy who could have been one of three or four guys in any given situation. So it's I think there was that one reliever that it just didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Jose Alvarado was supposed to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't available and he wasn't there. So, two numbers that stood out to me in the series: Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola, and Suarez allowed a total of 6 earned runs in 26 and 2/3 innings. That's like a shade over a 2 ERA. And Shohei Ohtani was 1 for 18 with 9 strikeouts. It's hard to reconcile those two things with the Phillies losing the series, but I think we can explain that with a third set of numbers, which is that in the 3 losses, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper were 3 for 35 with 15 strikeouts.
0.95 or something like that.
That's probably the series right there, right? Like, your big guys for 3 of the 4 games pretty much shot blanks, right?
Yeah, so. And I mean, take nothing away from their guys or from our guys, but their third guy did a lot of damage in Hernandez, Teo. We didn't. I mean, those 3 guys are the ones you're paying to do the damage, and when they don't do the damage, it's like a lot of people said, if Ohtani was 1 for 18 with 9 strikeouts, would you? And the one hit was off of Strom that was a crucial 4th run for him. I mean, again, it's people can look at Orion Kerkering. He's no more guilty than Matt Strom.
Right.
And it's not to point fingers at those guys. But all in all, none of these guys have any fingers pointed at them if our offense did what it should, what you expect it to, what they're paid to do. And they all stood up. They all said, everyone said we need to do better. We're missing pitches, myself included. I always said myself included. It's like, yeah, yourself and the other 2 guys at the top included. That's who didn't do anything. That's who did absolutely nothing in this series. And they had pitches to hit. I looked at it like it seemed like they went to the plate. A lot of guys went to the plate in that series without a game plan. Like, am I going to look for a first pitch middle in and try and do something with it? And the ball that Turner hit up the middle to end the game 3, game 4, game 3. Yeah. But he hits a pitch up the middle, and they're right there. He hit it pretty good, but it was a pitch up and a little bit in, it was a little bit up and in. It's like, to me, when I was playing, heard so many guys talk about. I'm going up there looking first pitch, middle in, if that's and turning on it. And I understand Trey's saying, I'm thinking up the middle, but how many times we swung at pitches that were just uncompetitive pitches and put themselves in the hole? It was like our guys were so afraid of going 0-1. That's what it looks like. I can't get, because their starters have great stuff. There's no denying that. Their staff, the guys we faced, they pitched well, no question. It was a great pitch series all the way around.
Yeah.
But you have to have a game plan. You have to have, I don't know, just seeing some of the swings that we took early in counts. I'm like, or taking pitches. I didn't see a plan there. And I'm not saying there wasn't. I'm sure there was. It was not executed very well.
So they've gone from 87 wins in 2022 to 90 to 95 to 96 this season. They've won back-to-back division titles. Everyone says the playoffs are different, and it's about who gets hot at the right time. But they had the second best record in baseball after the trade deadline, so they were pretty hot going in. And the question now, especially with a few big-time free agents in Schwarber and JT Realmuto and Ranger Suarez, becomes like, how do they get over the October hump? And is this core good enough to do it or capable enough to do it? Can they do it with this group, or do they need to make big changes? I mean, where do you sort of come down on how many times do you take a kick at it with the same core before you decide we've just got to change the mix?
I'm pretty sure you've heard the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is what I think about, these decisions are way above my pay grade. I mean, I can have an opinion, but it means nothing. It's what they decide and what they decide to do. But doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, it can be tough. And that's why I have no idea what they're going to do. And talking to Schwarber, and listening to the interview, not talking to him, but listening to him talk after the game, I mean, I almost felt like he was sorry that he was going to be leaving this team. That's how I took it. Now, that might be way off. Maybe he's just sorry the way it ended and can't wait to get back. But or maybe it was just him talking about just in general that if he's not back, it'll be sad. I don't know. It's hard to. I mean, there's got to be some changes. I still am baffled why we didn't have somebody that could run on that bench.
Yeah.
I know Rojas,
right?
Rojas had a leg problem. I don't know if Justin Crawford was ready after his injury. But if he was, what a guy that hits .330 every year, had a .411 on base percentage, I believe, stole 42 bases. But the one thing I've heard about him, and maybe I'm getting off subject, but one thing I've heard about him all year was he hits too many balls on the ground.
Yep.
I never heard that about Rod Carew. I never heard that about Larry Boa. I never heard that about Juan Pierre.
Right.
There's some guys had some pretty good careers.
Yeah.
That hit the ball on the ground. If you don't have pop, why do you want him hitting it in the air?
Yeah.
And it was like
that narrative about Crawford is something I've never understood, and I think that there are people in the organization who feel the way you and I do, that hey, who cares? I mean, if he hits .330, he's hitting .330. But yeah, like that's a narrative I don't understand.
What's the one thing that this team lacked was they had punch, but they didn't have quality at bat. I mean, they would run into one.
Right.
But outside of Trey, who obviously led the league in hitting, who hit for average on his team? So it's like, if you hit .330, I don't care where you hit the ball.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me. That going back to the fundamentals, bunting. This guy, I don't know if he can bunt or not, but how is Johan Rojas or if Justin Crawford can't bunt? How are these guys not able to bunt a ball?
Right.
That the fundamentals, is it worked on? Is it stressed? Maybe it is. I don't know. But those are the things that I don't know. Just that they frustrate me that I watch it, and maybe I'm thinking too much old school for what the game is today. I don't know. Maybe because people will say, "Oh, you're just down on analytics." I'm not down on him. I just don't think it's all about that.
Right.
So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it leads me to one of my last questions here, and that's, as I wrote this weekend in the Inquirer, so we're all going to be talking about Rob Thompson's future over the next few days, and we could relitigate the up down with Robertson in Game 1. We could talk about the bunt in Game 2. We could talk about anything you want to nitpick, but I think on balance, it's hard to argue that Rob Thompson hasn't done a good job. The pitching strategy worked in Game 3. He had the team, I think, in the right frame of mind in LA to kind of take it literally like inning by inning and try to get back to Philadelphia. But I do wonder, and I'm not an advocate of replacing the manager, but I do wonder if this is analogous at all to like Danny Ozark in the late 70s, where they had a core that was in place that was difficult to change, and it was a new voice in the manager's office that they decided was something that they could do in 79. And they certainly got a different voice and a new voice in the manager's office. Look, we can talk about maybe bringing up some youth, Justin Crawford, Aiden Miller eventually, certainly Andrew Painter, you figure is going to be part of this next year at some point. But is the most meaningful change you can make, especially if you're going to bring back Schwarber and Real Muto, and I think they want to, if they can make it all work, is the most meaningful change you can make a change in the manager's office.
I mean, that's out of my league, but I personally, when the players love playing for a manager, and not all the players did, or you kind of know where I'm going with that. Casty obviously had some concerns with the manager. As far as I know, he's the only one.
Right. Same.
And I think one of the big things is getting players to play for a manager. I think they all really love Rob Thompson. I don't think there's any question. So to take him out when players care that much about him, is that going to be more detrimental? The one thing I said it earlier in the season, one thing I wish, when guys make stupid plays, Rob has their back. And I know it's old school, but go back to Dallas Green. Dallas Green would call him out publicly, not to embarrass him, but just to say this is not the way we should play. And I think that he really protects the players, which players love. Obviously, they don't want to be called out. I didn't want to be called out for bad pitching or whatever it was. But sometimes you need to do that, I think. But that's maybe a difference in philosophy. The bigger thing is, why doesn't and I don't know if it happens or not, but I can't help but go back to Darren Dalton. When things went south, when somebody did something stupid, when they try and take second on a ball that they're going to be out by 20 feet, or just the base running, the mistakes, Dalton would be right there. He would have something to say to him in the dugout. Or somebody would. Somebody would have something to say to him, not to embarrass him and not out loud, but just go to him and be a team leader and say, we don't do that. We can't do this here. Having a player do that takes a ton of stress off the manager.
Yeah.
I think Darren Dalton made Jim Fergosi's job so much easier in that clubhouse, because players knew they feared more Dalton coming at him than Fergosi. And I mean it. It's like, Darren Dalton, I don't want him getting on me. But if it needed to be said, it was said. Yeah. And if it was something to do with pitching, I was 40 years old in 93, but he would say, hey, call me Drew. He said, Drew, will you come and talk to, there was a situation with Mitch getting upset that he didn't get a save in a game, and Schilling finished the game, a 3-1 game. And Mitch came in the clubhouse and we're all celebrating. He's firing his glove in his dugout and ripping his jersey off. And Dutch got right up in his face. It's like, we just won a game, stuff like that. It's to have a player. And I think there's players on this team that could do that. But how do I say this? diplomatically. Is there too much about me that doesn't allow players to do that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that would certainly help if players would police themselves a little bit and talk to each other about, we can't do that here. Not having Paco go, you can't make that base running mistake, or some other coach coming up and saying something. How about a player doing it?
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know. I'm not down there. Maybe they did, but I didn't see it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think with the managers, style-wise, I think it's generational. I mean, you see it everywhere. You see it in New York. People get frustrated with how positive Aaron Boone is all the time. It's just the way it is nowadays with how managers have to handle, and coaches in pro sports in general have to handle the athletes today. So, I mean, that's a conversation probably that we could have unto itself. But Rob Thompson's not the only one who
no question
to accentuate the positive. And I do think he gets on. I know he gets on guys privately.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll never see it, at least not in front of the cameras.
Yep.
It's going to be a fascinating offseason, and maybe we'll wrap up this conversation with this. You just finished season 28, if I'm not mistaken, in the booth, which you're the longest tenured member of the Phillies broadcast team. You're half of a terrific and enormously popular radio booth with Scott Fransky. You guys, I thought, have always had such a fantastic natural chemistry there. You tell it like it is, as people who listen to this interview know. And, I've heard you say, there's a way to separate negativity from honesty, and you do that as well as anyone. So I'm curious, most people know that you overcame very aggressive prostate cancer a few years ago. How are you feeling first? And, I know you were hoping to do some road games in the NLCS and World Series if the Phillies had gotten that far. Hopefully that's a sign that you're feeling good and healthy. Do you have a sense for how much longer you want to keep doing this?
I don't know. Definitely I want to come back for another year at least. With the basic agreement coming up, collective bargaining agreement the following year, honestly, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. I've been a part of it. Almost cost me work in Philadelphia because I got involved as like a player rep back in 94, I should say, because our other two guys took off. And it's kind of left me here in Philadelphia. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this position, but I was also kind of hinted towards, you might want to back off a little bit, Lair, if you have any interest in working in this organization. So on top of that, I do want to thank you for mentioning the difference between negativity and honesty, because this organization has been great to me for the most part. But there's been some instances where I've been called in. I was getting called in regularly, where I had a president tell me that I'm not liked by the front office. I had another boss tell me that I was a dime a dozen as a color analyst, a boss. There's been some other instances, and that hasn't happened of late, which I really appreciate. But my big thing when I would come back to them would be, you guys are getting honesty mixed up with negativity. And if I'm not honest in this town, I might as well not be here, because the fans will hate me. And I said, I need you to understand that I'm not broadcasting to our front office. Dave Dombrowski might not like what I'm saying. John Middleton, our owner, he might not like what I'm saying, but the fans do. And the fans are a big part of what pays us, and people listening, get sponsors. It all comes back to just, to me, being honest, I think. And so I'm going to be honest to the fans. That's what my obligation is to, even though the Phillies are paying me, they're paying me, but for my integrity, I'm going to be honest with the fans. And I've said to them a few years ago, four years ago, I think, if you don't want me, just say so. If you don't want me around, if you don't want me doing this. So, it's hard. I don't try and make the organization mad at me, but also I think they need to understand from my perspective that I'm doing this for the fans. And if fans are so important to this organization, then that's the way it has to be. So,
Yeah, and the one thing that you get, and like, I mean, you played here, you played in Boston. I've worked here, I've worked in Boston. Fans in markets like this and that, they understand the difference between, telling it like it is and pulling your punches. And you can't pull your punches in places like this.
yeah, that's so true. And that's just the way I feel. And speaking of how I feel tremendous. I feel great. However, there's some internal things that I'm getting a scan tomorrow to find out if there's a second recurrence of the cancer. We'll see. But for me, I put it in the Lord's hands, and whatever it is, it is. I'm not going to change it. I can just trust Him, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, our fingers are certainly crossed. We're hoping you get good news. And look, this was a blast as always. Like I said at the top, whenever I send up the signal, you've always been gracious enough to be there, whether it's writing a foreword for a book I wrote a few years back to, just coming on for a conversation like this. So you're the absolute best, and I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us here at Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hope to do it again.
Absolutely. We'll have you back.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
You bet. Of course, I want to thank Larry Andersen again for joining me. It's time now to open the reporter's notebook. We'll try to thread the needle between tying a bow on the Phillies series against the Dodgers and looking ahead to what comes next. So I have three thoughts for you, and here goes. First, I asked Nick Castellanos how the Phillies reconcile winning more regular season games every year since 2022, but taking a step back in each postseason. He said, quote, "The season is one thing. Your talent can get you to the playoffs, but once you're in the tournament, it's completely different. And I think as a whole organization, once we got into the tournament, we've regressed over the last 4 years," unquote. To me, it boils down to the little things. Matt Strahm missed his spot in Game 1, and Teoscar Hernandez hits it into the seats. Trey Turner's throw to the plate is a smidge late in the 7th inning of Game 2, and 2 innings later, the Dodgers execute the wheel play perfectly to snuff out a bunt and ultimately win that game. Plate umpire Mark Wegner misses a strike call on a full count pitch to Alex Call, which results in a 1-out walk in the 7th inning of Game 4 and ultimately costs Christopher Sanchez a chance at finishing that inning. In a series that's as evenly matched as Phillies Dodgers, the little things add up, and not enough of the little things went the Phillies' way. Second, think of how different the Phillies bullpen might have looked if A, they had Jose Alvarado, who was ineligible for the postseason as a consequence of his 80-game PED suspension earlier in the season, or B, Jordan Romano had panned out as the Phillies thought he would when they signed him as a free agent last winter. Instead, Game 1 turned in the 7th inning with David Robertson on the mound. Robertson, of course, signed with the Phillies in the middle of the season after not pitching for the first half of the year. Kerkering faltered in Game 2, and then, of course, the season-ending throw. All along, I've been saying the Phillies were a leverage reliever short. After they lost Alvarado, they were 2. Joan Duran was a great pickup at the trade deadline, but they still needed more in a bullpen that failed them in the 2023 NLCS against Arizona and the divisional round last year against the Mets, and wasn't deep enough again this year. Third, I believe the Phillies want to re-sign Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto in particular. As John Middleton often says, it's only money. And when push comes to shove, I don't think the Phillies will let themselves get outbid, especially for Schwarber. Length of contract could be a bigger issue. My sense is the Phillies would prefer 2 years for Realmuto, who will be 35 next season, and 4 years for Schwarber, who's a DH. If there are teams out there that are willing to give Realmuto a 3rd year and Schwarber a 5th, then it might get dicey. That said, if the Phillies do succeed in bringing back Schwarber and Realmuto, how do they change the roster mix? Maybe they get more aggressive about moving on from Alec Bohm. They tried to trade Bohm last offseason, but didn't get an offer that they liked. If Justin Crawford is part of the outfield next year, is there room too for Brandon Marsh? And what about Castellanos? In previous years, nobody wanted to take on his contract. but Castellanos is down to $20 million for one more season. With a work stoppage looming after 2026, can the Phillies get a team to take a one-year flyer on Castellanos and the possibility of him having a bounce-back season? If so, maybe they can target right field as a spot to upgrade. There will be options on the free agent market from Kyle Tucker to Cody Bellinger. It's shaping up to be a fascinating offseason. We'll see how the roster turns and how it all plays out. All right, it's time for Hit and Run, where we take a question from you out there. There are several ways you can join the conversation. Drop me an email at slauber@inquirer.com. Reach out on the social media platform of your choice at X, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, or drop a question in the comments section on YouTube as well. This week's question comes from Darian Duca at DarianD27792 on X. And he writes, I wonder if they can get Kyle Tucker and Pete Alonso, put Bader in left, Harper in right. Darian, thanks for the question. I chose this one because it highlights what I love most about covering a team like the Phillies. The final luxury tax payroll numbers will be calculated over the next few weeks, but the Phillies are expected to come in around $310 million, which would be third most in baseball behind only the Dodgers and the Mets. And as long as they keep spending money like that, and John Middleton hasn't given any sign of slowing down, they can play for just about any free agent in the winter. Kyle Tucker, sure. Pete Alonso, sure. Cody Bellinger, absolutely. On and on down the list. But to address your point, Darian, no, I don't see them going for Tucker and Alonso. They don't have much interest in putting Bryce Harper back in the outfield. So Alonso isn't really a fit here unless Schwarber leaves and you want to replace him with Alonso as your DH. Harrison Bader, we should mention, has a mutual option. I expect he'll decline his side of that and become a free agent. But this is the time of year when we can think about almost any scenario because the Phillies have and will continue to be in the mix for just about any player on the market. It's about to be rumor season, and the Phillies will be part of plenty of rumors over the next few months. All right, we'll leave it there this week and let you know that all past episodes of Phillies Extra are available by going to Inquirer.com and clicking on the Inquirer Live tab or on the Inquirer's YouTube and Facebook pages. That's an easy way to catch up on any shows that you've missed. You can also listen to this episode and many more on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, please give us a follow and rate and review us. It really does help, especially because we want to keep this show going all off season long if we can. Thanks again to my guest, Larry Andersen. And thanks, as always, to our producer, Angelica Irizarry, for her great work each week to help us put this all together. Most of all, thank you so much out there for listening, watching, and of course, reading the Philadelphia Inquirer. See you next week.